Hi! This is my Golf GTI, as you're probably aware by now, and to be honest, I thought you guys would be bored of seeing this thing on my channel. But actually, I'm still receiving a lot of messages from people asking for more info on this car. What's it like on the daily basis? What are the good things about it? What are the bad things about it? So today, I'm going full YouTuber, and I'm going to present to you 5 things I love and 5 things I hate about the Mk5 Golf GTI. Kicking things off with the first thing I love about this car, and the most obvious thing that's great about the GTI, the interior and the build quality. Now this is one of the things that for me sets this car apart from other cheap performance cars. It's the reason, or one of the reasons, I went for this instead of a Focus ST or a Clio 197. It's really nice in here. I like this strip of aluminium, I like all the buttons and dials, I love the seats, I love the tartan print on the seats. I like the indicator stalk, listen. Ooh, that's a proper chunky click, that is. These are the things that matter on a day-to-day basis, more than your 0 to 60 time. If you've got a car that drives really nice, but the indicator is all gross, it's gonna bug you like 15 times a day. Not the case in this car. The second thing I love about the Golf GTI, and this for me is the car's party piece, the suspension. Every single time I drive louder, faster, more aggressive hot hatchbacks, when I get back into my car, the thing that jumps right out to me is the damping. Because on bumpy and uneven surfaces, over speed bumps, this car is so comfortable. It's twice as good at dealing with that stuff as any other performance hot hatch I've driven, at least the cheap ones. But then when you chuck it down a twisty B road, it doesn't handle like a ship. It still gives you good feedback about what's going on the road underneath you, and it stays very flat through the corners. This is the masterpiece of the GTI, that balance between performance and comfort. It's just something it does better than any other car at this price point. Another thing I love about this car, and this is a bit of a boring one, is the space. It's a nice roomy car in here, lots of headroom, and the back seats can fit actual adults. In most small cars, when the seat is in my driving position, the seat behind it is reserved only for people who've displeased me. But in this car, you can quite happily get 3 full-size human beings back here, even if they have legs. And the boot space really isn't bad at all. The next thing I love about this car is the speed. Mk5 GTI has about 197 brake horsepower, and in my opinion, that is more than enough. It's also very smooth, the power delivery. You wouldn't believe the amount of times that I look down at the speedo and realise I'm accidentally doing 110. And when I say 110, I mean 65. I honestly believe that there's a sweet spot as far as hot hatchback power, and it's somewhere between about 180 and 230. For me, that's how much horsepower hot hatches should have. All these AMG A45s and Golf Rs with 300-400 brake horsepower, it's not a hot hatch, is it? That's not nimble and chuckable. That's a nuclear missile. It's fantastic, but it's a different thing. This is how a hot hatch should feel to me, and it's plenty quick. The final thing I love about this car, and I realise I'm in the minority here, is the styling. The Mk5 seems to get a rap as being one of the uglier GTIs, and yes, okay, it's not as pretty as a Mark 1, or a Mark 2, or a Mark 3, or a Mark 7, but I still think it's a really good looking car. I think it perfectly strikes the balance between hot and hatchback. At first glance, it's pretty normal looking, but look closer. Notice the flared wheel arches, notice the red trim around the grille, notice the GTI badging and the lowered ride height. I think it's spot on. Now then, moving on to the things that I dislike about this car. Truth be told, there's nothing I hate about it. That's kind of the nice thing about the GTI. But there are a few little things that get on my nerves, and the number one thing, believe it or not, is the steering wheel. I've mentioned this before, but everything else in the cabin feels really high quality, but the wheel, it's like it's wrapped in cling film. It's all plasticky, and it sort of gives you friction on your hands. Why isn't it leather wrapped like all steering wheels? It really annoys me. The second thing that I'm not so sure about with this car is the driving position. I thought maybe this is because I was a freakishly tall man, but I find that the wheel's too far away from me. To get the wheel as close as it needs to be, my feet are too close to the pedals. So you can see here, the wheel goes up and down, but it's not telescopic. Oh my God.
4 things you hate about the Volkswagen Golf GTI.
Hi, I've owned this car for 6 months and made many YouTube videos about it. I didn't know the wheel did this. Turns out the wheel is adjustable and I'm just a Moving swiftly onwards, the third thing I dislike about this car are the Monza wheels. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the way these wheels look. You kind of love them or hate them, the Monzas. I think they look fantastic, but there are two problems with them. Problem number one is they go moldy. You see this here? This is not rust, it's not damage, it's underneath the sort of protective layer. And it's moisture that gets inside and sort of wears away at it. And you can have this kind of recut and restored to pristine, but it will only happen again in a couple of years' time. The second thing is that these wheels are unbelievably curbable. Every time I think about getting the wheels re-diamond cut, which you can do for about 70, 80 quid per wheel, every time I think about doing it, I immediately curb one of them. And it makes me think it's probably not worth it because I'll just screw them up again. Another thing I'm not so sure about with this car is, and I'm going to contradict myself a bit here, it might be too smooth. Now let me explain, the power delivery in this thing, as I mentioned, is such that you can very easily break 100 miles per hour without even realizing. And that's very impressive, but in a hot hatch, shouldn't going fast feel fast? When I drove that Fiat Panda 100 HP the other day, when you did 50 in it, it felt like you were going 10 million miles per hour. And that's how I like my hot hatches. There should be a sense of occasion to the speed. You shouldn't have to break the law to have fun. And if there's any complaint with this thing, with its smooth power delivery and its excellent motorway manners, going fast is not as exciting as perhaps it should be. I'm genuinely considering a subtle remap of this car, not to make it faster, but just to make the acceleration a bit more exciting. I blame Brad and his ridiculous turbo boosty Mark IV that I drove the other day. Ever since I drove that, I just want my car to scare me a bit. The final issue I have with this car is the sound, or lack thereof. Look, I'm not really the boy racer type. I don't need my car to have a big shouty exhaust on it. At least I thought I didn't. And then I drove that ridiculous Clio 197 the other day and well, ever since then, let's just say I've been having sound insecurities. I've wanted my car to be a little bit louder ever since. Not really loud, because it's a Golf GTI. It'd be silly if it was shouty, but just a little extra something. However, I have made a modification to this car, my first modification to this car, and I think I've improved the sound problem. Let me show you. Okay, here it is. My first modification to my Golf GTI. Engine swap. No, not really. Here it is. That is a K&N Typhoon cold air filter, cold air intake I should say, and it does exactly what you'd think. It feeds more cold air into the engine, helps it breathe better, slight increase in horsepower, but more importantly, it makes a nice whooshy noise when you press the throttle beyond sort of 50%. Now, it's still not the most exciting sounding car in the world, but I do think it's a step in the right direction. It's, well, put it this way, I'm spending a lot more money on petrol now because I keep on hanging on to gears just to hear the whooshes. I might still put a naughty exhaust on it, we'll see, but there you have it. 5 things I love, 5 things I hate about my car. Is there anything I missed? Is there anything else you want to know about my car? Do you strongly disagree with everything I said? Of course you do. Let me know in the comments below. Cheers.